I have a problem, and that is sometimes I don't care. But as a minister, I'm expected to care about everything, right? Right? I mean, people say something to me like, a war just broke out in West Africa, and Dairy Queen just brought out a new strawberry daiquiri blizzard flavor. And I say, no way. They didn't discontinue the Oreo flavored one, did they? Just kidding. But it is a problem because as a minister, I'm supposed to care about everything and almost equally. The truth is, I do care. Not in the same way. But I'm a minister because I care. And it can be exhausting to care about just about everything. It's why most of my colleagues at this time of year are just ready to sleep through the summer. Some of them get the whole summer off, by the way. I just want to let you know that. Most of them don't have such a great church and a great team as I have. But I tend to feel the war and the loss and the discontinued blizzard all, but not the same. This isn't just about ministers. We all have this sense. We're all at some time overwhelmed by the many needs, by the many struggles in our own lives or in the lives of our world. And we are asked to balance them. I want to read you that list of hopes in the poem that Beth read, the prayer poem by Ted Loder. He said, help me to be a beginning to others, a singer to the songless, a storyteller to the aimless, a befriender to the friendless, to become a beginning of hope for the despairing, of assurance for the doubting, of reconciliation for the divided, to become a beginning of freedom for the oppressed, of comfort for the sorrowing, of friendship for the forgotten, to become a beginning of beauty for the forlorn, of sweetness for the soured, of gentleness for the angry, of wholeness for the broken, of peace for the frightened and violent of the earth. Help me to believe in beginnings. It's exhausting just to read that list. But I get it. It's aspirational. I feel, though, like that list puts a big weight of responsibility on me. Of course, it's not my list. My list might just be, God, make me good. That would be enough. But I think we walk around with these kinds of lists on us every day. These kinds of lists of what we should be for the world. I want to tell you a story from one of my favorite books. It's by Ram Dass. It's called How Can I Help? And in that is a story of a daughter and a mother, and the mother has a stroke. And the daughter takes the mother in. Just stop me if this seems familiar to any of you with aging parents. She takes the mom in and says, we're going to do this right. We're going to get her better and then get her home. And then eventually, what happens is what always happens. The fighting begins. The mother has this age-old delight in the fighting. It's exhausting. It's frustrating. And it peaks at a fight over a boiled egg. And the mom asks, why are you doing this for me anyway? And the daughter answers, because I'm afraid of you. I want you to get well. Maybe I ignored you when I was young. I needed to show you that I was strong. I needed to get you ready to go home. You and I aren't getting any younger, and so on and so on. And the mother stops the daughter and says one word. She says, junk. What? The daughter says. She starts yelling at the mother. The mother says, junk. We don't have to have all those reasons to do these things. We love each other, and that is enough." "Sorry," said the daughter, and the mother said, "Don't be sorry. Junk is fine. It's what you don't need anymore. I love you." The reason I'm telling you all this is because this Sunday we kick off our Faith and Being series. We're working on the On Being series by Krista Tippett, who interviews impactful religious leaders, out of which today's worship comes. It comes out of this interview with Joan Halifax, an interview that took place in Chautauqua, New York, at the Chautauqua Institute. They were sitting at the Hall of Philosophy, a place I have preached many times now, a sort of Parthenon outdoor amphitheater, almost like this sanctuary without the walls, overlooking a lake in southwestern New York, a lake where my weary legs were cooled as I rode across the country. The interview is about many things. Tippett asks Halifax about her life and the work that she has done. But it centers for me on compassion fatigue, or what Halifax calls empathic distress, of getting overwhelmed, of trying to find the core reason to be in the midst of a chaotic world. There's something funny about ending a whole year on compassion with a summer series starting on compassion fatigue, I admit. But we all know about it. It ranges from the overwhelm of the news and movements of the world to not caring a whit about someone in our lives or something that we must do, or that inner battle with our perspectives on what is going on. I thought a lot about this week, about this compassion fatigue, this empathic distress. I know many of you have told me on occasion that when the news comes on, you feel overwhelmed, that you can't even see it anymore, that you tune it out, that it is avoided, that it is turned off. I find myself plugging in my iTunes instead of tuning in to the news a lot. And beyond that, I find myself losing hope in doing anything about the things I hear about in the news. The result is a loss of care, an admission that is a hazard in my profession. The result is numbing. And I think that might be what Fox News' strategy actually is. Bombard us with so many things that we can't do anything about, but that we should care about, but cannot contain until we give up. And we go and watch reruns of the Golden Girls. We can't let that happen. Not the rerun part. You're on your own for that. But the giving up. We can't let that happen. Make me a beginning, says the poet. Further down in the interview came a time for questions, as happens at Chautauqua. Joan Halifax was asked by someone who was just there to hear. Her name was Aisha, who said this. I want to read it to you. Aisha says, "I was struck by what you were saying about compassion fatigue. In my younger years, I was a social worker, domestic violence shelter worker. I did a lot of leftist political work, and at a certain point realized that I was surrounded by people who were dedicating their life to no, to fighting against something. And my husband and I decided to get married, and we sat down and said, what is our yes? How are we going to commit to living yes on a daily basis? Because if we stay here and do this, we will spend our whole life just fighting and saying no. And I wonder," Aisha said, "sometimes if part of what people refer to as compassion fatigue is an unwillingness or perhaps fear of doing the hard daily personal work to pay attention in one's intimate relationships and in one's neighborhood and in one's community, because that's constant. That never ends, she said. Remember, this is still a question. She says, but if you're thinking about it, that I need to do something about the thing out there, that thing that I see on television, that thing that I read about in the newspaper, instead of what's happening in this house, what's happening right here, why don't I start here? Once that sort of intention, mindfulness, becomes almost instinctual, then the tendency to sort of fall into that empathic pit where you feel like you can't get out in response to what's going on in the world lessens, because you're building up the capacity to hold complexity. Miss Halifax responds, so that was a question with the whole answer in it? Thank you, Aisha, she says. We agree. First of all, there's recognition, and then there was intention, and then commitment, and then action. Then you made it real in your everyday life, and that's where the rubber meets the road, exactly in our everyday lives. So thank you. I think this is a start. I think Aisha has it. Becoming a beginning for each other means focusing on what we can change, what we can support. When songs can sing for the homeless in our midst, when stories can be told for the aimless, when befriending of the friendless can be done. And those songless and aimless and friendless might be as close as living in your own home, in your families. All this means that our job is to figure out what really does matter, what recognition we can give the complexities of our lives, what intention we can build, what commitment we can make, and what action we can take. The key to challenging empathic distress is doing what is right in front of us. It means we step back first. We notice what is happening, but we don't step so far back that we don't care. In religious terms, what I'm saying is we witness what is happening in the world, witnessing the character and conflicts of our reasoning to help another. Witnessing means knowing why we want to help, why our actions are important. It calls on a deeper, more universal source of action, one that is steady and reliable. To witness is to notice and to understand that we are not alone, that we do not bear all the responsibility, even in caring for one person, that their role is just as important as ours. I hear this all the time with those of you caring for aging parents. I'm the only one who can help. My brother is no help at all. Everyone lives so far away. But that mentality forgets to witness to the parent who is part of the solution. When we burn out, we lose the caring facility. We find empathic distress interferes with our reasoning, and what it does is makes us believe that we are the solution to all problems. Parker Palmer calls this functional atheism. It has nothing to do with theology. It is that notion that we are the only one who can solve the problems in front of us. We are the only one that can make a difference. We are the final source of service. We are the only one who can sing the song to the songless and friend the friendless. To which Parker Palmer and I say, junk. if we witness the internal movements of these narratives, we can see how our ego drives functional atheism in our lives. When we witness, we find a holier ground to stand on in helping each other and the world. We make room for the holy. We make room for love. Maybe we can pray, God, make me a beginning. Ask the people at the Children's Advocacy Center how they keep going. Day after day, seeing the kinds of cases come through their door. I'm sure, in part, their answer is that they know that they are there to witness what they can and cannot do and deal with what is in front of them. Our world calls us to be overwhelmed constantly. But we must call it back, call on the holy. We must seek a deeper response to find the yes in life, to hold those who are close and dear, and to do what we must. How many stories have we heard about doing what we must, even in overwhelming circumstances? I remember the doctors at San Francisco General Hospital, where I was a chaplain many years ago at the AIDS clinic. Those are the doctors that eventually cracked the code on the drugs that stemmed the tide of the AIDS epidemic. Every day, day after day after day, men and women with sores and uncontrollable symptoms of illness walked into the clinic, and day after day after day, the doctors met each one with dignity and grace. And one of those doctors said to me, you get up, you know what you will meet, and you do what you have to do until you find a cure. Most of us don't have that kind of strength, but we can be beginnings for ourselves and others. What those doctors knew was that they were beginnings for each patient that walked through the door. They also knew that they were not alone, that they were working with so many to find those cures. And I knew that all I could do was what was asked of me, to be a witness, to not let the suffering I saw be tucked away and hidden or shamed, but to see and acknowledge it and know I could only treat the patients I met with kindness and attention. And sometimes that is enough. If we shrink away from the world, if we feel overwhelmed and it closes us down, we fail to hold the complexity in our lives. We lose the capacity to care. God, make me a beginning. Notice Loder doesn't say, make me an ending, but just a beginning. A singer to the songless, a storyteller to the aimless, a befriender to the friendless, a beginning of hope, an assurance, a reconciliation, freedom for the oppressed, comfort for the sorrowing, friendship, sweetness, gentleness, wholeness, peace. Not a list of burdens, but aspirations. That even in the midst of all we see in the world, that we might see each other more clearly. We must do what we can in love for those who are around us. Help me to believe in beginnings. I care about important things, and above all, that we never lose the capacity to care. I think Joan Halifax would say the same to us today. So that is the first Sunday in our On Being summer series. Who wants to go get a Dairy Queen Blizzard? Amen. We're going.